He rejected his mail-order bride for her size, but the blacksmith saw her true beauty. Clara had always dreamed of a new life, far away from the small, dusty village where she grew up. Her family had struggled for years to make ends meet, and the promise of becoming a bride to a man across the country seemed like a chance to start fresh. When the letter arrived that a wealthy rancher had chosen her, she felt a mixture of hope and fear. She packed her belongings carefully, folding each dress and scarf, as if each fold carried her dreams and worries together. She did not know much about the man who was waiting for her, only that his letters had seemed polite but distant, his words formal and reserved. She had pictured him as kind, a man who could see past her shy nature and appreciate her for who she truly was. The journey was long and tiring. Clara traveled by train, staring out the window as the scenery shifted from green fields to rolling hills and then to vast plains. The rhythmic sound of the wheels over the tracks became a steady companion, almost like a heartbeat guiding her forward. She watched other passengers, families, and travelers, wondering if they had also left everything behind for a new life, hoping for something better. Clara thought about the home she had left, the familiar streets, and neighbors who had known her since childhood. She felt a pang of sadness, but reminded herself that this was a chance to grow, to be more than she had ever been before. When she finally arrived at the small town where the rancher lived, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The station was quiet, with only a few people waiting for travelers. Her heart pounded as she looked around, scanning for the man who had chosen her. Edward, the rancher, was tall and imposing, with sharp features and a serious expression. When their eyes met for the first time, Clara felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. She smiled timidly, hoping he would smile back, but instead he studied her quietly, his gaze lingering in a way that made her stomach twist. "Are you Clara?" he asked finally, his voice calm but carrying a subtle note of disappointment. She nodded, clutching her small bag closer to her chest. Edward nodded slightly and gestured toward the horse-drawn carriage waiting outside. He did not speak kindly or offer any warm welcome, and Clara felt a wave of unease. She had imagined a greeting full of smiles and encouragement, but instead there was only cold politeness. As they rode through the dusty streets toward the ranch, Clara tried to make conversation, asking questions about the town, the ranch, or even the weather. Edward answered in short, clipped sentences, rarely looking at her. Each pause in the conversation felt heavy, making Clara shrink inward, wishing she could disappear into the shadows of the carriage. When they arrived at the ranch, the expanse of land stretched out before her, vast and intimidating. Rolling hills, a large barn, and neatly fenced pastures made the place look prosperous, almost like a dream. Yet the emptiness of Edward's reception made her feel more alone than ever. She stepped down from the carriage carefully, trying to appear graceful, though her heart was pounding and her cheeks were warm with embarrassment. Edward led her inside, where the house was grand but cold. The walls were filled with paintings of landscapes, the floors polished to a shine, but it all seemed distant, almost unwelcoming. Edward's reaction to her presence was subtle but unmistakable. He glanced at her clothes, then back at her, and Clara could see the shadow of disappointment cross his face. It was not cruel, but it was clear. She did not match the image he had in his mind. Clara felt her heart sink, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. She had always been self-conscious about her size, but she had hoped that Edward would see her for more than appearances. Instead, she felt judged, measured, and found lacking. The words to explain herself, to plead her case, died in her throat, leaving only a quiet, aching sadness. She tried to keep her composure as Edward led her to her room. It was spacious and well kept, with soft linens and a window that looked out over the pastures. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. She wondered if she had made a mistake, if she should have stayed in her village, where she at least felt accepted. She felt a tear slip down her cheek, but quickly wiped it away, refusing to let it show. She had to stay strong, she reminded herself. She had to find courage somewhere deep inside, even if Edward did not seem to notice her efforts. As evening fell, Clara explored the house quietly. The kitchen smelled faintly of bread and roasted meat. The living room was orderly and silent, and the corridors were filled with polished wood and shadows. She found herself pausing by the window, looking out at the land stretching endlessly before her. It was beautiful in a harsh, untouched way, and she imagined herself walking through the fields at sunrise, feeling the wind on her face and the earth beneath her feet. The thought gave her a small spark of hope, a reminder that perhaps there was more to life here than Edward's cold judgment. The first night was difficult. Clara lay awake, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cows, the creaking of the barn doors, the whisper of wind through the trees. She thought about her journey, about her family, and about the unknown future that awaited her. She felt alone, yes, but also aware that this was her chance to prove herself, to show that she was more than the shallow measurements of another person. She closed her eyes and whispered a promise to herself that she would not let this moment define her, that she would find strength even in rejection. The next morning, Clara awoke to the sun spilling through her window. Birds chirped outside, and the world felt alive and fresh. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple but neat outfit, and tried to ready herself for the day ahead. Edward was already in the main room, reading a letter by the fire. When he saw her, he nodded once, acknowledging her presence, but there was no warmth in the gesture. Clara felt her heart sink again, but she refused to show it. Instead, she spoke politely, asking if there was anything she could do to help with the morning chores or around the house. Edward's response was brief and non-committal, but he allowed her to stay, which she counted as a small victory. As Clara moved through her first day at the ranch, she tried to find small joys. She fed the chickens, swept the floors, and arranged flowers in the main room. She explored the gardens and admired the way the sunlight fell across the fields. Though Edward barely spoke to her, she found herself speaking to the animals, to the wind, to the quiet spaces of the house. In those moments, she discovered a small sense of freedom, a tiny oasis where she could be herself, even if the world around her seemed harsh and judgmental. By evening, Clara realized that her new life would not be easy. She had been judged before she could show her worth, and the first impression had left a mark on her heart. Yet she also realized that the ranch, the land, and even the animals held possibilities she had never imagined. Perhaps, she thought, if she could survive the first days, if she could stay strong, she might find her place here. She did not yet know that the journey ahead would be full of challenges, but also full of people who would see her true value beyond appearances. That night, Clara looked out of her window once more, staring at the stars stretching across the dark sky. She whispered to herself, "I will not let him decide my worth. I will find my place, even if it takes everything I have." She felt a spark of courage, fragile but real, lighting her heart. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time she understood that strength did not come from being liked by everyone. It came from believing in oneself. With that thought, she finally drifted into sleep, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The morning after her first uneasy night at the ranch, Clara awoke with a mixture of hope and fear. She had promised herself that she would be strong, but the memory of Edward's subtle disappointment still lingered in her mind. She dressed carefully, smoothing her hair and straightening her simple dress, determined to present herself as capable and polite. Today, she told herself, she would try to make a better impression, even if it seemed impossible. She did not yet understand how deep Edward's judgment went, nor how it would affect her confidence. Edward, as usual, was already busy in the main room when Clara appeared. He barely looked up from the papers in his hands, only giving a curt nod as she entered. The distance between them felt enormous, like a chasm she could not cross. Clara's heart sank, but she forced herself to speak politely. "Good morning, sir. Is there anything I can help with today?" she asked, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Edward's gaze flicked toward her, sharp and measuring, before he said, "You can begin by organizing the supplies in the pantry. Make sure everything is in order." Clara nodded and turned to the task, trying to keep her hands busy and her mind calm. She found the pantry filled with neatly stacked jars, sacks of grain, and tools for the ranch. As she worked, she carefully arranged everything by size and type, making sure nothing was out of place. It was quiet work, and the rhythm of lifting, sorting, and stacking helped soothe her nerves. Still, she could feel Edward's eyes on her from time to time, watching as if evaluating her every movement. It made her tense, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to do her best. By midday, Clara had completed her task, arranging the pantry in a way that made it easier for anyone in the household to find what they needed. She stepped back to admire her work, feeling a small spark of pride. But when she turned to Edward, hoping for a kind word, he simply glanced at the organized shelves and said, "Fine, that will do." The tone was neutral, almost dismissive, but it carried a hint of criticism that made Clara's stomach twist. She had hoped for encouragement, for even a small smile. But instead, she felt the sting of rejection all over again. Feeling her confidence waver, Clara decided to step outside for a moment of fresh air. The ranch stretched out before her, vast and green, dotted with animals grazing peacefully in the pastures. She walked slowly among the fields, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the rustle of leaves, and the distant clatter of a horse's hooves. The open space was comforting, a reminder that the world was bigger than one person's judgment. Clara took a deep breath, letting the wind lift her spirits a little. She reminded herself that she was more than Edward's first impression of her. As she wandered, she noticed a few townspeople passing by. Some nodded politely, others smiled faintly, but no one stopped to speak. Clara felt a pang of loneliness, but also a tiny sense of relief. Here, in this new place, she was a stranger. People did not know her past, her insecurities, or her dreams. She could choose who she wanted to be. That thought brought a small smile to her lips, even as her heart ached from Edward's rejection. By the afternoon, Clara returned to the house, determined to keep herself busy. She helped with the cooking, chopping vegetables, and stirring pots under Edward's watchful eye. Every movement was careful and precise, as if she were performing a delicate dance. She wanted to show that she was capable, that she could contribute to the household in meaningful ways. Yet Edward's responses were always brief, often critical, and sometimes entirely absent. Clara began to realize that no matter what she did, he would not see her value. It was not a reflection of her ability, she told herself, but of his narrow vision. That evening, after Edward had retreated to his study, Clara sought comfort elsewhere. She went to the small garden behind the house, where flowers bloomed in colors she had never seen in her village. She knelt among them, touching the petals gently, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. It was in these quiet moments, surrounded by nature, that she felt her strength returning. She realized that her worth was not determined by another person's approval. She had survived a long journey to get here. She had faced her fears and taken a step into the unknown. That alone was proof of her courage. As she walked back inside, Clara overheard Edward speaking to a neighbor about her. The words were not cruel, but they were dismissive, focused on her size and appearance rather than her character or abilities. Clara's heart sank, and for a moment she felt the old weight of shame and self-doubt pressing down on her. But she remembered the garden, the open fields, and the small victories of the day, the organized pantry, the meals she had prepared, the effort she had put into learning the routines of the ranch. These things mattered, she reminded herself. They were proof that she could survive and even thrive in this new life, even if Edward could not see it. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Clara worked tirelessly around the ranch, learning chores, caring for the animals, and exploring the land. She began to understand the rhythms of the place, noticing the quiet beauty in the sun rising over the hills, the way the wind moved through the trees, and the harmony of the animals as they grazed. Each small task completed brought her a sense of accomplishment, even when Edward offered no praise. She discovered that she could find satisfaction in her own efforts, in her own perseverance, and in the small moments of peace that punctuated the long workdays. Despite Edward's rejection, Clara began to notice small acts of kindness from the townspeople. The innkeeper offered her a warm smile and a kind word when she passed by the shop. A neighbor left a basket of fresh bread and cheese on the doorstep, a silent gesture of welcome. Clara realized that while one person had judged her harshly, many others were willing to see her for who she was, gentle, hard-working, and determined. These small gestures gave her hope, reminding her that not everyone measured worth by appearances alone. One afternoon, as Clara was tending to the chickens, she noticed Edward watching from the porch. She felt a familiar twinge of anxiety, wondering what he might say or think. But instead of criticism, he said nothing, simply observing. Clara felt a small sense of relief. Perhaps he was beginning to see her persistence, even if he could not yet see her value fully. She continued her work, careful and deliberate, finding strength in the rhythm of her chores and the knowledge that she was capable of handling whatever came her way. As the days passed, Clara began to develop a quiet routine. She rose with the sun, worked diligently, and found moments of solitude in the gardens, fields, or by the barn. She learned to take pride in her efforts, understanding that her value was not determined by another person's approval. She discovered that she had a resilience she had not known before, a strength that carried her through the hardest moments. And while Edward remained distant and critical, she no longer allowed his judgment to define her entirely. One evening, after a long day of work, Clara sat by the window, looking out at the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. She thought about her journey, about the rejection she had faced, and about the small victories that had brought her this far. She realized that her worth was not measured by her size, her appearance, or Edward's approval. It was measured by her courage, her perseverance, and her ability to find beauty and purpose in the world around her. That night, as she lay in bed, Clara whispered a promise to herself. I will not let his words or actions define me. I will find my place here, and I will be proud of who I am. She felt a small spark of hope, fragile but persistent, lighting her heart. The journey ahead would be difficult, but she understood that she had the strength to face it. Even in the face of rejection, Clara had discovered something vital: her own resilience, her own worth, and the quiet power of her courage. In those first days of life at the ranch, Clara learned more than chores or routines. She learned the value of self-respect, the importance of kindness, and the strength that comes from perseverance. Edward's rejection had been painful, but it had also sparked something within her, a determination to prove to herself, not to him, that she was capable, worthy, and strong. And though the days ahead promised challenges and hardships, Clara felt a quiet certainty that she could face them, one step at a time, with courage and hope guiding her way.
The next morning, Clara woke with a sense of quiet determination.
She had grown stronger in the days since her arrival at the ranch, learning to accept Edward's cold behavior and focusing instead on the tasks she could do. She dressed simply, tying her hair back so it would not get in the way of her work. Today she planned to explore more of the land around the ranch, hoping that a little fresh air and the wide open spaces would ease the loneliness that sometimes pressed down on her. As she stepped outside, she noticed a figure working near the blacksmith shop at the edge of the town. Sparks flew from the forge as the man hammered metal with steady, powerful strikes. The rhythmic sound of hammering rang through the air, creating a strange music of its own. Clara paused for a moment, watching him. He was broad-shouldered and strong, with rough hands and a calm, focused expression. Something about the way he worked with precision and care caught her attention. She had not seen anyone like him in town before. Curiosity nudged her forward, and she approached the blacksmith cautiously.
"Good morning," she said softly. The man looked up, surprised but friendly.
His eyes were kind, and there was a warmth in his gaze that immediately made Clara feel less tense. "Good morning," he replied. "Can I help you with something?" I was just passing by," Clara said, feeling a little awkward. "Your work, it looks very skilled." The blacksmith smiled, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand.
Thank you. It takes time and patience, but I enjoy it.
Not many people appreciate the work that goes into it, though. Clara nodded.
I understand.
I like working with my hands, too, though I've never done anything like this. Her voice was quiet but honest, and she felt a strange sense of ease speaking to him. He did not judge her or measure her worth by appearances. He simply listened. "I'm Thomas," he said, extending a hand. "If you want, I could show you a few things. It's not easy, but it's rewarding." Clara hesitated, then shook his hand. "I'm Clara. I would like that," she said. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, she felt a spark of excitement, a chance to learn, to do something meaningful, and to be appreciated for her effort. Over the next few days, Clara visited Thomas at the blacksmith shop regularly. He showed her how to shape small pieces of metal, how to hold the hammer properly, and how to work patiently to avoid mistakes. Clara was careful and attentive, eager to learn. Though at first she struggled with the weight of the tools and the heat of the forge, Thomas was patient, never raising his voice, always encouraging her to try again. When a piece of metal bent or broke, he would simply say, "Try it this way," and guide her hands with gentle corrections. Clara found herself enjoying the work more than she had expected. There was a rhythm to it, a satisfaction in seeing the raw metal gradually take shape into something useful and strong. She discovered a confidence she had never felt before, realizing that her hands could create, repair, and contribute in ways that mattered. The blacksmith shop became a sanctuary, a place where she could escape the sting of Edward's rejection and feel capable and valued. As the days passed, Clara and Thomas began to talk more. He shared stories about his life in the town, about the people he had helped, and the challenges of running the blacksmith shop in such a small community. Clara told him about her journey, her fears, and the disappointment she felt with Edward. Thomas listened carefully, never interrupting, never judging. His attention and kindness made her feel seen, as if someone finally understood her true value beyond appearances. One afternoon, while they worked together shaping a small iron gate for the ranch, Thomas said, "You know, Clara, most people focus on what's on the outside. They don't stop to notice the patience, courage, and kindness someone carries within them. You have all of that, whether anyone else sees it or not. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. His words were simple, but they carried a truth she had longed to hear. For the first time, she felt proud of herself, not because someone had approved of her, but because someone recognized her strength and determination. Through her work at the blacksmith shop, Clara began to see a different side of the town. She noticed how people respected Thomas for his skill and his fairness. She observed how the blacksmith treated everyone with dignity, whether they were wealthy or poor, strong or weak. Clara realized that true respect came from actions and character, not appearance or wealth. The lesson settled in her heart, comforting her as she thought about Edward's shallow judgment. She understood now that one person's rejection could not define her life or her worth. Thomas also became her guide to the community. He introduced her to neighbors, helped her navigate the routines of town life, and quietly defended her from gossip or unfair remarks. Clara began to feel a sense of belonging, a feeling that had been missing since her arrival. She laughed more, spoke more confidently, and took pride in her contributions to both the blacksmith shop and the ranch. The work itself became a bridge, connecting her to the people around her and showing her that she could be valued for her skills and her character, not just her appearance. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Clara and Thomas stood outside the blacksmith shop looking over a small piece of ironwork they had completed together. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. "I never thought I could do something like this," she said quietly, almost to herself. Thomas smiled. "It's not about what you thought you could do before. It's about what you choose to do now and the effort you put in." "You've done well, Clara. Very well." The praise was gentle, but it meant more to Clara than any approval from Edward ever had. She realized that being appreciated for who she was, for her effort and her character, was far more valuable than being judged for her appearance. For the first time, she felt a spark of true confidence. She understood that she had the power to shape her life, to choose the people who mattered, and to find joy and purpose in meaningful work. As the days turned into weeks, Clara's relationship with Thomas grew stronger. It was not love yet, but it was a deep trust and friendship built on respect, kindness, and shared effort. Thomas encouraged her, supported her, and gave her the freedom to learn and grow. Clara, in turn, found herself feeling more capable, more confident, and more at peace. The blacksmith shop had become a place where she could thrive, where her worth was recognized, and where her talents were appreciated. Meanwhile, Edward remained distant, his judgment unchanged. But Clara no longer allowed his coldness to affect her as it once had. She had discovered a new measure of value, one that did not depend on someone else's approval. She knew that her worth came from her courage, her kindness, and her perseverance. She had faced rejection and hardship, yet she had found strength in herself and in the support of someone who truly saw her. One day, as Clara worked on a small iron railing for the garden, she paused and looked around the town. She noticed children playing, neighbors chatting, and the quiet rhythm of life moving forward. She realized that she had found a place where she belonged, even if Edward did not see it. She felt a sense of peace and purpose that she had never known before. For the first time, she understood that life's true rewards came from effort, kindness, and the courage to persevere, not from someone's fleeting judgment. By the end of the week, Clara had completed several projects with Thomas, each one teaching her new skills and deepening her confidence. She began to think of herself as capable and valuable, not because of anyone else's opinion, but because she had earned it through hard work and determination. She had discovered that strength came from within, from facing challenges, learning and growing, and that she did not need validation from someone who could not see her true worth. That evening, as the sun set over the hills and the sky glowed with shades of orange and pink, Clara and Thomas stood together outside the shop. The forge had cooled, and the day's work was complete. Clara felt a quiet joy and satisfaction she had never known before. She realized that life could be kind, that people could see her for who she truly was, and that rejection did not have to define her. With Thomas's friendship and guidance, she had discovered not only her strength and skill, but also the possibility of finding happiness, purpose, and even love in unexpected places. For the first time since her journey began, Clara felt that she was not just surviving, she was thriving. The blacksmith shop had become more than a place to learn. It had become a home for her spirit, a place where she was valued and respected. And while the future remained uncertain, she now faced it with confidence, courage, and the knowledge that true beauty and worth were measured by heart, effort, and character, not by appearances or shallow judgment. Clara woke to another bright morning at the ranch. But this day felt different. Over the past weeks, she had grown stronger and more confident, thanks to her work with Thomas at the blacksmith shop. She had learned to value her own efforts and see the beauty in the small things she could create. The chores at the ranch no longer felt overwhelming, and she had found ways to contribute that made a real difference. Today she decided she would continue to focus on the things she could control, letting her heart guide her actions rather than worrying about Edward's opinion. As she walked through the garden, Clara noticed the flowers she had tended beginning to bloom more brightly. The garden had started to flourish under her care, and the sight filled her with a quiet pride. She felt a deep connection to the land, the animals, and even the people of the town who had started noticing her presence. For the first time, she understood that true beauty was not only in appearances but also in effort, care, and patience. Each flower she had planted, each task she had completed, was a testament to her character and determination. By mid-morning, Clara decided to take a walk into the town. She had grown more comfortable in her surroundings and wanted to see how the townspeople reacted to her now that she had begun to find her place. As she passed the small shops and homes, she noticed people looking at her differently. Where before there had been polite nods or distant glances, now there were smiles, waves, and even small greetings. The innkeeper called out, "Good morning, Clara. Your garden must be thriving with all your hard work." Clara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She realized that her consistent effort, kindness, and patience were being recognized, not by just one person, but by the community as a whole. As she walked, she overheard a group of neighbors talking about her. "She's really something," one woman said. "I never would have guessed that she could manage the garden and help around the ranch so well." Another neighbor added, "And she's always so polite and helpful." It's nice to see someone care about the town like that. Clara's heart lifted. Hearing these words made her feel appreciated in a way she had never expected. The townspeople were beginning to see her not just as Edward's mail-order bride, but as a capable, kind, and valuable person in their own right. Later that day, Thomas invited Clara to the blacksmith shop to help with a large project for the town, a new set of tools for the farmers who worked the fields. This was the first time Clara had been asked to participate in something so important for the community. She felt nervous but also excited. Thomas explained the work carefully, showing her how each piece of metal would be shaped and how it would fit together to create strong, reliable tools. Clara listened intently, following his instructions with precision. As the hours passed, she discovered a deep satisfaction in contributing to something that would help so many people. While they worked, Clara noticed Edward observing from the edge of the town square. He had come to inspect the progress on the project, and his expression was unreadable. Clara felt a flicker of nervousness, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. She hammered, shaped, and polished the metal pieces, concentrating on doing her best. Thomas guided her hands when needed, but he also allowed her to try on her own, showing confidence in her abilities. Each completed tool was a small triumph, a testament to her skill, patience, and determination. As the day wore on, more townspeople gathered to watch the progress. Children stood on tiptoe, curious to see the work being done, while adults offered encouragement and praise. "Well done!" someone called as Clara finished shaping a tool. "You've done an excellent job." Clara's cheeks warmed with pride. She had never received such recognition before, and it felt deeply rewarding. In that moment, she realized that her true beauty lay not in her appearance, but in her strength, kindness, and the tangible results of her efforts. By evening, the project was complete. The new tools were neatly arranged, ready to be delivered to the farmers who would rely on them for their work. Clara stood back and admired the results, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had contributed to something meaningful, something that would make a difference in the lives of others. Thomas clapped her on the shoulder, smiling warmly. "You did wonderfully today, Clara. Everyone can see the care and effort you put into this work. You should be proud." Clara felt a surge of happiness and confidence. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for how she looked, but for who she was and what she could do. Edward, however, remained quiet. He approached the completed project, examining the tools carefully. He had spent so long focused on Clara's appearance that he had failed to notice the person she truly was. Now, as he saw the tangible results of her effort, her skill, and her care, he realized that he had made a mistake. Clara was not just a mail-order bride. She was a capable, kind, and talented young woman who had earned the respect and admiration of the entire town. For the first time, Edward felt a pang of regret, understanding that his shallow judgment had caused him to miss something extraordinary. Despite Edward's silence, Clara did not let his attitude diminish her pride. She had learned a valuable lesson. Her worth was not determined by one person's approval, and true beauty was measured by character, effort, and heart. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to continue contributing to the town, helping others, and embracing the life she had chosen. The blacksmith shop, the garden, and the ranch had become places where she could grow, thrive, and be valued for her true self. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Clara walked through the town square. She noticed the smiles, the greetings, and the small gestures of kindness from the townspeople. Each interaction reminded her that she had found a place where she belonged, a community that appreciated her for who she was. Thomas walked beside her, his presence steady and comforting. They did not need to speak. The shared satisfaction of the day's work and the quiet understanding between them was enough. That evening, Clara returned to the ranch, carrying with her a sense of accomplishment and joy. She had faced rejection, loneliness, and self-doubt, yet she had persevered. She had discovered that true beauty was not something measured by size or appearance, but by kindness, courage, and the way one contributes to the world. Clara understood now that her strength, her patience, and her determination were what made her remarkable, and that these qualities would carry her through any challenge she faced. As she settled into her room, Clara reflected on the events of the day. She thought about the townspeople who had begun to recognize her efforts, about the project she had completed with Thomas, and about the quiet pride she felt in her accomplishments. She realized that she had grown in ways she had never imagined, discovering skills, confidence, and resilience that she did not know she possessed. The journey that had begun with fear and rejection had led her to a place of strength, belonging, and recognition. In the quiet of the night, Clara whispered to herself, "I am more than what someone else sees. I am strong, capable, and worthy of respect. She felt a warmth in her heart, a deep understanding that she could no longer be defined by Edward's shallow judgment. She had found people who valued her for her true self, who appreciated her efforts and her character, and who believed in her potential. The knowledge gave her a sense of peace and joy that she had never known before. Over the following days, Clara continued to thrive. She balanced her work at the ranch with her projects at the blacksmith shop, gaining skill and confidence with each passing task. She became a valued member of the town, known not for her appearance but for her kindness, her perseverance, and her willingness to help others. People began to seek her advice, to ask for her assistance, and to include her in community events. Clara realized that her life had transformed from one of uncertainty and rejection to one filled with purpose, respect, and meaningful connections. Even Edward could no longer ignore the change in her. He observed Clara's interactions with the townspeople, her skill at the blacksmith shop, and the respect she had earned. Slowly, he began to understand the mistake he had made in judging her by her appearance alone. He saw the strength, patience, and kindness that Clara possessed, qualities far more important than physical beauty. Although he had rejected her at first, he now recognized the extraordinary person she truly was. By the end of Part 4, Clara had not only discovered her true worth, but had also begun to change the perceptions of those around her. The town had come to see her as a capable, kind, and valuable member of the community. Thomas had shown her support, encouragement, and friendship, helping her realize that true beauty and value are measured by character, effort, and heart. And although Edward's rejection had caused initial pain, it ultimately led Clara to find her own strength, independence, and sense of belonging in a community that truly appreciated her. Clara woke to a bright, calm morning, the sun spilling golden light across the ranch. Over the past weeks, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more connected to the town and its people. The work with Thomas at the blacksmith shop and her contributions to the ranch had earned her respect, and she finally felt the quiet joy of belonging. For the first time, she truly believed that she could create her own happiness, regardless of what Edward thought or said. She spent the morning in the garden, tending to the flowers and vegetables she had planted. The garden had flourished under her care, each bloom a small reminder of her effort, patience, and resilience. Clara paused to admire the work, feeling pride in the life she was building with her own hands. Her thoughts wandered to Thomas, the blacksmith, whose kindness, patience, and encouragement had helped her discover her own worth. She smiled softly, grateful for his support and the quiet friendship that had grown between them. Later in the day, Thomas arrived at the garden with a small package of tools he had forged for her. "I thought these might help," he said, handing her the neatly polished items. Clara accepted them, her eyes lighting up with delight. "Thank you, Thomas," she said. "They're wonderful, and I know they'll make my work easier." Thomas smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes, and they spent the afternoon together, working side by side. There was an easy comfort in their companionship, a trust and understanding that needed no words to be felt. As the days passed, their friendship grew deeper. Thomas encouraged Clara in her work and offered advice, but he also respected her independence, allowing her to make her own choices and learn from her experiences. Clara, in turn, began to feel a quiet affection for him, admiring his strength, kindness, and the way he treated everyone with respect. She realized that he saw her for who she truly was, not her appearance, but her heart and spirit. This realization brought a sense of peace and happiness that Clara had never known before. The townspeople continued to recognize Clara's efforts and character. They invited her to community gatherings, asked for her help with events, and sought her advice on practical matters. Clara became a respected member of the town, admired for her skill, patience, and kindness. She felt a deep sense of belonging, knowing that her contributions made a real difference. The warmth and acceptance she received from the people around her made her confident that she had found a place where she truly mattered. One afternoon, Edward came to the ranch to check on the fields and the progress of the town projects. He noticed the townspeople's friendly interactions with Clara, their smiles and words of praise. He saw the admiration and respect she had earned and began to realize the error of his earlier judgment. The rejection that had once seemed like a small matter now felt significant, and Edward felt a pang of regret. He understood that he had overlooked someone extraordinary, someone whose strength, kindness, and dedication had left a lasting impact on the community. Despite Edward's presence, Clara remained composed and focused on her work. She no longer allowed his opinion to influence her sense of self-worth. She understood now that her value was not measured by his approval, but by her actions, her character, and the way she treated others. She greeted him politely, but her heart was calm and steady. Edward, seeing her poise and the respect she commanded from the townspeople, felt humbled and reflective. As the day ended, Clara and Thomas delivered the completed tools and repairs to the farmers and townspeople who had requested them. The community expressed their gratitude with smiles, kind words, and small gestures of appreciation. Clara felt her heart swell with joy, realizing that her efforts had made a tangible difference in the lives of others. The feeling of being valued for her skill, patience, and character was more fulfilling than anything Edward's approval could have given her. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Thomas spent more time together, sharing quiet moments at the blacksmith shop, walking through the fields, and tending to projects around the town. Their friendship blossomed into a deep and meaningful connection, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Clara found herself looking forward to each day, not because she sought validation from anyone, but because she enjoyed the companionship, guidance, and kindness that Thomas offered. One evening, as the sun set over the hills and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Thomas and Clara stood together outside the blacksmith shop. The day's work was complete, and the quiet of the evening surrounded them. Clara felt a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that she had found her place in the town and had earned the respect of its people. Thomas looked at her with a gentle smile, and in that moment, Clara realized that their bond had grown into something deeper than friendship. Thomas spoke softly, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity. "Clara, you've done so much, not just for the town, but for yourself. You've shown courage, patience, and strength, and I admire you more than I can say." Clara felt a flutter of emotion in her chest. "Thank you, Thomas. I couldn't have done any of this without your guidance and support. You've helped me see my own worth." They shared a quiet smile, a silent understanding passing between them that words could not fully express. Over time, their friendship naturally evolved into love. Thomas admired Clara not for her appearance, but for her heart, her determination, and the way she treated others with kindness. Clara felt a deep sense of happiness and security with him, knowing that she was valued and cherished for who she truly was. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine affection, creating a bond that was both strong and tender. Clara's life at the ranch and in the town continued to flourish. She balanced her work, her friendships, and her growing relationship with Thomas, finding joy in the daily routines and meaningful contributions she could make. The townspeople continued to support and appreciate her, recognizing her efforts, skill, and character. Clara felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had created a life of purpose, respect, and happiness, even in the face of earlier rejection. Edward, observing Clara's transformation and the admiration she had earned, began to reflect on his own actions. He realized that his shallow judgment had caused him to miss an opportunity to appreciate someone extraordinary. While he could not change the past, he recognized Clara's strength and the positive impact she had made on the town. In seeing her thrive despite his rejection, Edward learned a valuable lesson about the importance of character, kindness, and recognizing the true worth of others. One sunny afternoon, Clara and Thomas organized a small celebration in the town square to present the completed projects and tools they had worked on together. The townspeople gathered, expressing their gratitude and admiration for Clara's efforts. Children laughed and played, neighbors exchanged stories and smiles, and the community celebrated not only the work completed but also the person who had contributed so much. Clara stood beside Thomas, feeling a deep sense of pride and happiness. She had found her place, earned respect, and discovered the true meaning of value and beauty. As the celebration continued, Clara reflected on her journey. She had arrived at the ranch with uncertainty, fear, and the sting of rejection. Edward's judgment had been painful, but it had led her to discover her own strength, resilience, and worth. Through her work, her perseverance, and her growing bond with Thomas, Clara had created a life filled with purpose, respect, and love. She understood now that happiness comes not from external approval but from self-belief, kindness, and meaningful connections. That evening, as Clara walked home through the quiet streets of the town, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had never known before. The stars twinkled above, the wind whispered gently through the trees, and the world felt full of possibilities. She knew that she had faced challenges and rejection, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Clara had found her true beauty, not in the approval of others, but in her courage, kindness, and the way she made a difference in the lives of those around her. Clara's story became an example for the townspeople. They admired her not just for her skill and hard work, but for her character, perseverance, and the way she faced life's challenges with grace and determination. Children learned from her patience, adults respected her courage, and Thomas loved her deeply for who she truly was. Clara's journey from rejection to acceptance, from self-doubt to confidence, had transformed not only her life but also the community around her. In the end, Clara and Thomas built a life together filled with love, respect, and shared purpose. They continued their work in the blacksmith shop, contributed to the town, and nurtured the relationships they had built with the people around them. Clara had found happiness not by changing herself to fit someone else's expectations, but by embracing her true self, discovering her talents, and allowing her character to shine.